Well, let's see if it worked today. My computer doesn't show it is, but it said live at the top of the screen. I hate starting every one of these deals that way. Oh, it's updating. Excuse me. Well, I appreciate everybody here. I know we got a little bit of echo in this garage. It seems like both garages have their faults. The lighting in the other garage is somewhat suspect, but the lighting in this garage is good, but we've got more echo here. I guess I just need to buy more leather and see if I can, deaden the echo in here. I thought I'd turn this light on here. I'm kind of in a shadow, speaking of light. Give me just a second here. No, oh, here we go. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day here today to see what we can come up with to talk about. I've got a list of things, but I'd really like to know what you guys all want to hear about. Maybe some of you have got some suggestions. I had some really good questions suggested, and then I also wrote down some notes off of comments previously. Excuse me. So I guess I'll jump in with a couple of those topics. I'm working on a belt today. Here, this is the longest belt I've ever made. It's right there, it's touching the ground. It's 63 inches is the total length of the whole belt, but obviously it's going to be for a person that's 10 inches smaller than that, so 53-inch belt. And it's in the diamondback pattern, obviously in black. And I finished stitching one side of it yesterday, and I've been fiddling with this a little bit while I get set up today on this one. And I used the crimson hide chisels on this one. I tell you, I don't know if you saw my video or not. I've got a video where I compared KS Blade, Crimson Hide, and Kevin Lee stitching chisels. And I have not decided yet. The feedback that I got from everybody there was pretty heavily, I think, leaning towards the Kevin Lees. Felt like maybe the price difference to the Crimson Hide weren't worth it. But I keep going back to the feel in the hand. Go back and watch that video if you haven't and give me an idea of what you think, or give me some comments today about what you think are the best chisels that you've used as well. I see Jet Leather is in here out of Wyoming, windy Wyoming. It seems like every time I've been through there, it's windy. There's not a lot of trees, especially out in the eastern part of Wyoming, to slow that wind down for sure. And we've lived in the Denver Front Range area. I've lived there on 3 or 4 different occasions. I'd have to concentrate on that and see. Probably 4 different times. And that's the thing, I don't like the wind very much, and on the Front Range it seemed like it was always windy. We had a house in Colorado Springs at one point, and the winds in the springtime would get blowing so hard the house would rattle all night, and I couldn't get any sleep. So I thought that was the ideal place to live until I lived there, and I think there's probably a lot of places that people think they'd love to live there until they do. So anyway, so I was saying I've started that journey with these stitching chisels, and Kojak Leather sent them to me to try out, and he sent me a complete set of each one of those. And then I did talk a little bit about the weavers, and then this set of chisels here that I bought from Maker's Leather Supply. And I think that these probably are made by Kevin Lee, but they have more than one version in their lineup of tools. So I compared this against the Kevin Lee version 2 diamond chisels, and these didn't perform nearly as well as those did. And the hole profile on these are smaller, thinner, tighter than the Kevin Lees. drink of water here. So I haven't decided yet what to get. That's part of my challenge is that when I buy a durable tool, what I mean by a durable tool is something that's not consumed, such as like a utility knife blade. When I first started buying tools, as a young man, I would look for bargains and that type of thing. And I still look for a bargain. I've got a pretty good collection of, like work on the car type of tools. And I didn't buy Snap-on or Mac tools for those because I really don't do that often. I find working on cars frustrating, especially today. But my point is that I reached a point in buying tools that I realized that if I buy a quality tool, I don't need to buy that tool again. And so that's the reason why I'm really struggling in making this decision, because I would typically say I would buy the tool that I can justify. In other words, I'd buy the best, even if it's expensive, tool that I can justify spending the money on. Well, I can justify spending the money on the Crimson Hide because I think as long as I don't drop them on the floor, I think these things will probably last me for my career of making leather goods. I mean, it's possible that I break a tine. These tines, for one thing, as compared to the Weaver chisels, they have a point on them here at the tip. So the top, heavy 16th of the tip is a diamond or pyramid shape, so they're sharp there. The rest of it, there's no taper to it. It comes all the way down into this part of it here, and it's the same thickness from there all the way down to there. There's a lot of meat there. It's also not as sharp as the Crimson Hide, but the Crimson Hide tool, it's got a taper. Really, it's got a taper all the way down to here. I think they must put it on a milling machine and mill this, and then it's got a bevel here at the top that's the sharpest. And I think because of that design, you'd have to abuse this tool to break a tine, drop it or such. And I keep a foam mat here. I mean, there are spots here where it could fall and hit concrete, but I've got a 3/4 inch foam mat. I just installed a new one here this week. So if this drops on here, I think it would be okay. Now, with that said, I did drop, I'm not sure exactly how I did it, but I have a Sean Woodsum knife, an angled skiving knife, and of course it's sharp enough it hit that mat. That was the other mat. It was only 1/2 inch thick, and it was stuck in the mat. When I pulled it up, it was missing the corner of the blade. So now I have a modified Sean Woodsum knife because I sharpened that nick off the corner of it there, and I'll use it the way it is. I thought about taking it to him, and I might take it to him at the Prescott show this year and see if he can put a new edge on it. But so far, it's been working fine for me. So back on these, I think you'd have to really abuse it to get that to break. So, and I've thought about buying both the Kevin Lee and the Crimson Hide sets, but I'm not sure why I would need to do that. I think I need to settle in on one or the other. I used the Crimson Hide set on this belt that I've been talking about here. This belt is, it's pretty thick. He's a larger gentleman, and he's gonna work this belt pretty hard. I think he talked about using it to carry a concealed carry, so it's gonna have a lot of use, and it varies between 12 and like 12 1/4 ounce from one end to the other. So that's usually about the limit of where I go with a standard belt. I have made some. I had one gentleman tell me he wanted it. I want it to be a 1/4 inch thick. I'm like, I can make it a 1/4 inch thick. It's going to be a lot of leather there. Well, all the belts I make, all the belts I buy are 1/4 inch thick. So, that would be harder to use, especially this larger one. So when I was doing this one, I didn't think that it was worth the effort because on all of these other blades, I guess I should ask if my sound's okay, because I'm not seeing much in the way of comments here. Yeah, let me look here. Yeah, you're making me nervous. I don't have comments here. It says 23 people watching. So anyway, when I was making this belt, I was testing each one of them again, and the 5-tine, I could actually strike it and I could actually pick it up without setting the mallet down. So when I use the weaver set, I tend to line it up, pick up the mallet, I strike it, I set the mallet down, and then I have to work the weaver out. And it's not terrible to work out on a 12-ounce belt. This is definitely harder to remove. And I've had people say, why don't you set a wood block along the edge and do that? To me, that's just one more piece of the tool kit that I need to move around to create that pattern, and I'd rather not. But what I was saying is on this one here, this 5-tine, I was able to strike it and literally just pick it up and move to the next one and strike it again. So I was actually able to move along really quickly with the 5-tine. When I went to the, I think this is 9, when I went to the 9-tine, I did have to set the mallet down. So it's all about, to me, I don't know why, but I have a tendency when I make anything, I spend my time trying to figure out how to be more efficient. Quicker is a word, but more efficient in my moves and all of that to get done, whether it's stitching a belt, making the holes, applying my finishes on there, all of that. I try to figure out what is the quickest way to get that done. This one here definitely was quicker to get it in there, but it did take a little bit more of an effort and delay in that. So I'm not sure that I would order this as either 14 or 15-tine. I'm not sure that I would order this one. And the set here of these 3 tools here was like $212, and this was like $204 for this one tool here. So once again, I appreciate Kojak sending these to me to try, and he is not bald like Kojak was. It's a combination of names. And I still don't get any more comments. Making me nervous here. Do you guys hear me out there? Somebody tell me you hear me. So anyway, I think that's enough to talk about that. I had a few really pretty good questions. I was kind of waiting until I get into here a little bit, but I'm going to get one of them out here and we're going to talk about it. I don't know if you know or not, but I have an outdoor channel, and I've been posting some video there of some of our travels. And this summer we went to Greece and Croatia, and someone asked, and so they saw those travel videos, and somebody asked me if do I visit leather shops, and I tell you, it's probably a well, I enjoy visiting leather shops. It becomes a little bit of an obsession because it seems like every time we visit a town, you know, if we're traveling cross country between here and someplace on the East Coast, and if we stop in Branson, Missouri, you know, just picking a town, I probably, one of the first things I do when I get there is leather shop near me. And if there's one around, we're headed that way to go take a look at it. So I did do quite a bit of visiting of leather shops. I couldn't really find leather supplies. There was one we were in Athens, and it wasn't in a convenient area to get to, otherwise we would have gone there. But I saw a lot of leather goods shops, and the leather goods shops that we visited had a lot of handbags. And so the person asked me, do you visit there to get ideas? I'm leery to look too hard at how things are made because I don't want to like copy somebody's work. Excuse me. But at the same time, it's interesting to see how, you know, other people put bags together. And the one thing that I noticed is there was a lot of what I would call exposed seam bags that they manufactured there. You know, ones that you would sew right side out and sew down the edges. And they didn't have binding on them. They did painted edges, and I don't know why, but I'm leery of painted edges. I guess it's because I've seen painted edges on belts that after a couple years it flakes off. And maybe most people just figure a belt is a consumable item, and after a year or two they throw it away and get another one. But I have people all the time ask me if I paint the edges of my belts, and I don't. And that's the reason why, is I don't want that to flake off. But there was a lot of really unique designs. A lot of them had, there was one bag I was looking at, and it was really kind of unusual. The bag would open up like this, but it would close kind of like, and then it'd be like the reverse of a clamshell, but it was all these pleats. And I don't know, I suppose you'd have to put a stiff bag lining material on the inside to create those pleats with, but there was a lot of stuff there. In Athens, my wife and I visited, we were out walking one evening looking for a light meal somewhere, and we came around the corner, and I'll try to post in the community page a couple pictures there, but there was a little leather shop there, and the guy was set up in the front window, and he was making leather goods there. And so I was intrigued, and so we went in and we started looking around, and he had bags and he had belts, actually had leather jackets. And I asked him, do you make these? And so he was really quick to say, he showed what items he made, and I could see some in process. I guess I'm always a little bit unbelieving at first, whether they make it themselves or not. But I started looking at it, and I could see that it was handmade, and he had materials there, and it was kind of like it was like down steps, kind of like a half submerged place there in Athens, not far from the Acropolis. And his prices were pretty fair. And we bought a crossbody bag for my wife there, and his prices were inexpensive. So I looked at buying a couple other things there, and I'm like, the saying, well, I can make that. But I felt like I was helping to support, another artisan out there. And I'm assuming that, he's running that business because he's doing that to put food on his table. And I'm always leery to take, business away from those types of folks. Jim, I appreciate the good sound there. Hey, Rick's Outdoors, how you doing? So we do visit shops. Matter of fact, there was a gentleman in here that from London, and he was talking about, he said he was from London, and I said we visited London a couple of, May of 24, and I did the leather shop near me, and I got looking at it, and because a lot of times I say leather supplies near me, and then they show leather goods. I don't want leather goods. I don't know how to get Google to give me what I asked for. I wasn't interested in seeing leather goods. It was leather shops, supplies. But we went over, and I think it's East London Leather or Bag, and I did a little video of it actually on the channel. And they sell supplies and had some really unique hardware that I bought, and it's still in the same bag. I bought a remnant piece of leather that is still over here. But they offer classes. They teach classes there, teach you how to do handbag. They make prototypes. Maybe a company's looking for a new purse design, and they'll help make the prototype. And then they may make some after that, but then they may just send that prototype, someplace to have it manufactured. It was really kind of a unique little business there, and it was in this arts district, and I think it'd be fun to be in a spot like that. I have a desire to teach. I think that's one reason why I have the YouTube channel, and I've thought 2 or 3 times about, offering classes to make a belt here, and I don't want a class with 20 people, I don't have a spot for it, but, to have like somebody come in and spend a little bit of time in the shop, I'd have to probably use my weaver tools if I had crimson hides, because I wouldn't feel as good if one of those got damaged. But anyway, if you're in London, look it up. It's like East London leather, or if you type in East London leather, I'm sure it would probably come up. But every place we went, we found that. But I never once found a leather supply house in all those areas. And I think there's a lot of leather goods that come out of like Turkey and Crete and some of those different areas around Athens. But every place we went, leather goods was there. And my HR manager just brought this out. Let me show you here. So here's a couple examples. I think I've shown this before. I'm trying to remember, we visited somewhere, and there was this little leather deal here, and it's molded, and then it's got a little place to open up here. You can see how much it was. It was $7,000. I'm trying to remember. We were in, this might have been in the Caribbean somewhere. That was like $12, $7,000, whatever the local currency was. But anyway, it's a cool little one there. And then this is the bag that gentleman had made. And I told my wife, I said, let's just grab that because it's really a cool bag design. Oh, you think this wasn't, she just hollered at me. She thought this was from Budapest or Pesh. It could have been. I can't remember. Anyway, this was kind of a cool little bag. And I look at it, and I think when people have asked me if I make purses and such, and I get people, when I first started, my answer was always yes to everything. Yeah, I have, but do I like making them? And there's so many different parts to this. I look at this. I mean, he's got, his business stamp here. But, I mean, it's got a nice aligned seam here in the middle. It's got a pocket on the back side for, like, passport. And I think it's even got some more pockets on the inside. I mean, there's a whole job just making the liner for this. And I was looking to see here. I think the bag was like, it was like €40 or €35. It may not even have been that much. So I said, let's just grab that, and now we've got a story from there. Let's see. So I think I beat that to death there. Shop internationally. I had someone reach out to me and said there's something that I say, and he goes, it drives me up the wall, and I say I call this a hobby business, and he's like, that's confusing. It's either a hobby or it's a business. Well, it's ran as a business, but to me, I'm still going to say, to me, it's running this business is my hobby. I'll just say it that way. I do end up paying taxes on it. I keep track of all my sales and materials and all of that. And I'm not going to give business advice, but there are definitely advantages to running it as a business as opposed to a hobby. So I apologize if I've offended someone with that loose terminology of a hobby business. But to me, I look at it as more of a serious business if I was having to put food on the table with that, and I've said that before. So I think for some people, they continue to call it a hobby because if it becomes work, it's not fun anymore. But I do enjoy this. And like I've said before, if I could just make belts, I'd probably just make belts, but that would be boring for everybody here. And I've had some unique projects. The armadillo purse, I need to come up with a better thumbnail for that probably, but the armadillo purse that I worked on this summer and repaired, put it back into use, that was one of the more unique things I've worked on. But I had a blackjack that I recovered, the chair that I've worked on, and I've got some other unique things coming up. And I just got another order of leather in from Snapping Turtle Leather, and I've got a great project coming up for that, but I'm probably a month out on that as well. Are there any questions? I think we call it a hobby business because if it's real, yeah, it's not much fun. Yeah, thank you, Mirdair. armadillo purse. I think it was really cool. The lady purchased a large tote from me, and then in the process, she's like, "Do you repair things?" And she had just purchased that armadillo purse at an estate sale around the corner. And the funny thing was that after I was working on it, and I had a neighbor come over and look at it, and he grew up in the area there, and he said, "My mom had a purse just like this." So, been gone for decades, he said, but it's possible that it was his mom's. I had someone ask me that they don't see me groove everything that I stitch on a belt, and I don't. When I do the gunslinger pattern, I typically don't groove my stitch line on that. There's a couple reasons why. One, the stitches, when I make the gunslinger pattern, is just through the top layer of the belt. So, I don't want it to wear out. There's no doubt about that. But it's not doing any work. It's all decorative. I guess if it wore, I don't think it would, if you cut 3 or 4 of those, it wouldn't come apart because the stitches aren't exposed on the back. It's held in there with contact adhesive. Plus, I tap them down. I guess probably the biggest reason why I don't is trying to get a nice looking curve cut, to me, could be a little bit of a challenge. And I could, depending on which template I use, I've got 2 different templates. The template that I like the most is from Pikes Peak Saddlery, and I wouldn't be able to get a groover in there to cut that. The one I bought through Tandy, I think is made by Maker's Leather Supply. I think their logo's on it. I don't like it as much. I've talked about that before, but it does have an open edge I could use on that. But I just don't, because like I said, I pull them fairly snug. I set them down with the hammer. It's in the middle of the belt. I don't think it's going to get that much wear and tear on it. I've got one that I've switched around on belts. I get, like anybody else, I've been wearing this same belt here for 3 years, I think now. But I had a gunslinger pattern that I wore doing construction. I feel like I'm too far away here. That I wore doing construction, and a lot of wear and tear on it, and I didn't have any issues with any of the threads anywhere. I think that .08 Tigeritza thread's pretty tough thread, especially when you get when I tap it in, at least half of the thickness of that thread is buried in there. So I think it's really a pretty durable thread. But no, I don't groove the gunslinger pattern or the Western, either one. I just lay out the pattern on there. I mark it on. Sometimes I'll scribe it in with an awl. Sometimes I draw it in with a pencil. And people, I think, sometimes are like confused, like, why do you do it one way one time and another way the next time? Well, a lot of it has to do with how the belt's going to be finished. If I've got natural veg tan and I'm going to dye it black, if I've got some pencil marks that aren't totally erased, you're not going to see those, so that doesn't bother me. And then other times, depending on how firm that leather is, because in veg tan leather, it does vary a little bit. And maybe Dean would say if you're using Herman oak all the time, you would probably fine tune how you do that, because that leather's kind of the same. But not everything that I use is Herman oak. A lot of it's the MTL leather from Montana Leather. But sometimes that scribe line isn't as good. I have better light here, and so if I've got a little bit of a pattern laid out with my awl, I can see it really well here, so I tend to do more of it here that way. So I think that drives some people crazy when I use well, that depends. It's like, when do you put the clear finish on your belt? Well, that depends. I mean, if this belt here, if I was using white thread along the edges, then I would have this belt, I'd create the holes. I would do all the finishing on this belt, really, and then I would stitch that white thread last. I'll put one more coat of clear on it, but by then it's already sealed up. This one's black on black, so I haven't put any clear on this yet, and I won't until I get to the other end of it, because if I pick up black dye in the Reslene that I put on there, it's not going to stain the thread. So, I think that it depends, drives some people a little bit crazy there. So, So, yeah, I think I already talked about that pretty well. I had somebody ask me about, do I heat up the oil when I oil the leather? And that would probably be a bigger thing, say, if I was in Colorado during the wintertime. The garage out there in the wintertime, I usually heat it to like 50 degrees or something. And the warmer oil would probably, help penetrate easier on there more evenly. But I've never heated the oil. It's never really been that big of an issue for me. I did leave some oil there, and it was the Phoebe's Neat's Foot Oil Compound. And this is before right now I keep heat on in the garage just above freezing so nothing freezes in there. And it was really thick afterwards. And I've used it just oiling some boots and such. It seems like it still works fine, but there must be something in that compound that didn't like being frozen because it got cold enough to where it froze in there. And I don't know if regular Neat's Foot oil would do that as opposed to the compound, but the compound definitely did thicken up like that. So in the comments, can you let me know what other comparison videos, because I'm always like trying to figure out what comparison videos that my audience would like to see. The contact adhesive video, I thought I got quite a few views on that, and I think it was interesting to see. And I saw someone, another YouTube creator out there, a month and a half after I put mine out, they did another one there. But on mine, I really tried to be somewhat, well, not somewhat, as scientific as I could be. And I even used a scale to measure how much that leather held, one adhesive to the next. And really, when it comes down to it, the strength of that leather adhesive is only as strong as the leather that's attached to, because if you pull enough, it's just going to delaminate the leather. And the one thing that I noticed about that was that the more, and probably should have thought about it before, but the more that adhesive soaks into the leather, the deeper that is. I mean, it's still only going to be as strong as the leather that's there. And I've never really thought about reducing or thinning the contact adhesive that I use, but in that testing, the thinner contact adhesive held better, and I think that's because it penetrated into the leather pores and got a better hold on that. And so anyway, that worked. And I guess it's been a little bit of a slow summer for me in the shop. We were gone quite a bit. I had a family reunion in Indiana. We had our trip to Greece for our anniversary, and a few different things like that. And so the 3 quarts of contact adhesive that I poured in there, I think that was the very end of June or the beginning of July when I did that. I've got about a quarter of each one of those quarts left in those. So to me, that's actually, I'm gonna follow up. I do a follow-up video on that. But it's interesting because I think a lot of times, people are like, which contact adhesive works best for you? And sometimes that's it depends, because if you go through it fast enough, you don't ever have to think about thinning it. And so those have been in there long enough. It's a good test for the applicator bottles, but it's also a good test to see how they perform. And yesterday I was doing a little bit of research on thinning the contact adhesives, because there's a lot of, I'll just call it misinformation out there about what you should thin or if you should thin contact adhesives. So I did a little bit of research, actually called a couple of the companies and talked to them. So I'll talk more about that in another video there, but I need to know what comparison videos that you would like to see. I think the one on the stitching chisels, I think there's some value in that. And once again, I do appreciate Kojak sending that to me, but that came about because I said I really would like to try something better in the stitching chisels than the Weaver chisels. But I said, it'd be nice if there's someplace you could go, a hands-on shop, and try the different tools and see, because while this is a $27, $28 decision, these are not. And I hate to spend the money on the tools and then find out it's not what I thought it should be. And in the video, I talked about the price difference between the Kevin Lee version 2s, and I don't know if I made that clear, the version 2s from Kevin Lee, and the Weaver. The price difference, it's like a little over 2 times as expensive, but we're talking about a pretty low entry point to begin with. So I would say the Kevin Lee version 2, I keep saying that because these here that I bought from Makers, I think maybe are like their version 1. And, depending on what you're using, maybe that works for you. But the version 1 and the Makers Leather Supply and the version 2, they're within $10 of each other. And I would tell you that the version 2 is more than twice as good as the other ones, in my opinion. I want to keep adding "in my opinion" on there. Maybe just in your mind when I finish talking, then you can go ... and "in my opinion." But I'd like to know what comparisons you'd like. Milo on a belt, is burnishing the edges enough as a seal, or should Resin be used after burnishing? So I do. I go through a series. So when I do this belt here, my preference would be to do the stitching and then do the edge cutting. Part of the reason why is on some leather, I've had it want to pucker the leather a little bit. So if I already have that edge cut on there, that it gets a little bit of a waviness to it. And everybody has something, when they look at other people's work, they look at it and they go, yeah, I don't like that. Well, I don't like that about mine if I have that. So typically I'll do the stitching, then I'll cut it, and then I'll burnish it. But whenever I seal the belt, I know a lot of people don't like Resin because it's shiny, and I've said this before, but the only people that I think have been super critical about the leather being shiny have been other Leathercraft people, none of my customers. I've not had a customer yet look at those and go, do you have any that are less shiny? So anyway, the reason why I use Resin is because it does a better job of sealing in color rub off, and this is just my opinion. I think I could prove that easily, than the tan coat does. The tan coat allows you to oil the finish after it's finished. So that means it's porous enough to allow oil in. If it allows oil in, water is less viscous than oil. It's going to allow water in. So what ends up happening is, from wearing it, sweat, it will wick in, and then it brings color to the surface, and you get more color transfer to your clothes. The Resin, that problem pretty much went away. Now, I will say I changed 2 things at that time. I went from Phoebe's leather dye to Pro Dye. And so the Pro Dye is better at it than the regular leather dye is. I would still argue that if it allow oil in, it'll allow water in. And if you've tried to oil over Resin, it doesn't work. It just sits on the top. If it soaks in anywhere, it's areas you didn't get much Resin on there. So when I finish my burnish, then I will put Resin on all of it. And when I'm doing that, I'm applying it to the face of it, and I tip it up and I apply it to both edges, and then on the face of it, and then I flip it over and I get the edge, the back, the edge. I hit the edge a lot of times because it's really a porous surface, and I'm working to get Resin soaked into that porous leather there. Then I let it sit and dry, and then when I get it back out, then I'm really being critical of that edge. Do I like the edge? And there's a lot of times I'll take like 220 or 320 sandpaper, and I will sand these edges again, and then I'll put another coat of Resin on those edges. And to me, that's my version of an edge coat, is the Resin that's on there. And it's not gonna flake because it's in it. Now, I have seen where people talk about having Resin and tan coat delaminate from the leather. The only way I can see that happening, keep in mind, my background before I did Leathercraft was coatings industry for Sherwin-Williams paint. Typically, if you have a finish that delaminates, it's obviously because you didn't get a good bond. And I wonder, I have never dug in enough when I see that, because a lot of times I see that on Facebook, and if you get in there with opinions, people have pretty strong opinions about your opinions. But if you're getting, especially on that first coat, if you're getting good penetration, then it's going to stick on there. I've not had any peel. The only thing that I've had peel is if when I do say a gunslinger pattern and I've got white down the center, then what I'm going to do is I don't know why, but it bothers me. I don't want to have the stitching show on the back. So I create the pattern in the top layer. I stitch in the gunslinger pattern. I create the holes with the stitching irons. And then especially if it's a contrasting color, I will go ahead and I'll seal the face of that. The first time I did that, I sealed the face and the back. Well, the contact adhesive is not going to stick to that Resolene on the back of the belt. So you have to be careful to keep it just on the front. And so I'll do that, and obviously the edges, since it's not laminated together, I don't have any finish on the edges. So I'm really careful just to keep it on the front. And not long ago, I created one, and I was trying to make a fun little short video, and I was trying to stay in front of the camera, and I am moving it around enough, I got some of that sealer on the back of the gunslinger pattern. And I could have futzed with it, but I ended up throwing that top away and starting over again because it wasn't going to allow the adhesive to bond. So, and I use a sponge, and I would tell you that if you're using a sponge to apply it and you start to put it on there, a lot of times you'll get some streaking. You need to put it on heavy enough and keep it moving on there to get rid of that streaking. It won't go away, that streaking won't go away with another coat on there. It's really important that first coat be on there even, otherwise you'll see streaking in there. So I think I've talked that to death there. But so yeah, I use the Resolene, and I use tan coat. I use tan coat on natural veg tan items, especially if they're going to be used in an environment where they're going to get wet and going to need maintenance on those. And you know, that I did a series of belts. I know some of you guys, if you and gals, if you've been on here for a while, you've probably heard me talk about my brother Tom, and he goes by a trail name of Creek, and he hiked the Appalachian Trail, and I made 20 belts. I had 20 people. Well, actually, I had 19. I had one person said he was going to, and then it was a disconnected conversation string with them. So anyway, my goal was 10 belts or 20, and the proceeds from those I donated for the cause that he was hiking the Appalachian Trail to support, which is Tunnel to Towers. I'm going to put a link in this description when I'm done here of his channel. Anyway, I made those belts, and I used tan coat on a lot of those because a lot of those were natural veg tan. I created a pattern just for his hike, and then I sold those belts. And if some of you are probably wondering, but he finished his hike. He's got a YouTube channel on there that you'll find the link in the description. And in the YouTube channel, he likened the last 500 miles to a death march to get the thing finished. One, there's a deadline because they close the approach to Mount Katahdin in Maine because you get into October and the weather gets bad, and they don't want to be trying to rescue people off of there because of a storm that's come in and have snow because it's got elevation. And so the reason I'm telling you that is because his video, he's in Maine now, but he's probably got another month of videos coming out before he finishes. And he's, I'm probably going to remember it wrong. He's right around 700 subscribers. It'd be nice if he could get to 1,000 subscribers. So maybe follow that link over there or look up Tom Treks. But he finished that hike, I guess, about 10 days ago now. And he's back home recovering. And I know it's going to sound funny, reconnecting with his wife of 50 years. I think that's about right. 50 years, because he was on that trail for the better part of March to October. He was off of it in the middle of the summer, which is one reason why he finished as late as he did, but he had a family emergency. He had to come off the trail for a period of time. But he's got really some good videos, and it's interesting. I'm sure that my videos have changed. I know they have. My first few videos, I didn't have a lot of like really good ways to hold the camera. My angles weren't all that great. You're looking at my back part of the time when I'm stitching. And they're still far from perfect. There's people out there that have channels that when you look at their like LinkedIn or Facebook, their training is really in audio visual, and mine's not. I'm not even going to say my training's in leather. I've self-taught myself what I know there. But anyway, his videos have changed. He's getting more views, and his goal was to raise $20,000 for Tunnel to Towers, and that's to support firefighters, EMS, first responders. And he's at, last time I looked, he's at $25,000. So he reached that goal. And I saw names in there because it shows you who donated. And I saw viewers in there, and I really do appreciate that. That means a lot to me. And I see people making comments in his video that, you know, follow my channel as well. And I appreciate that. You know, that helps encourage him out there as well. I've had several people tell me they like the Sean Woodsum knives that I've got, and I've paid for every one of these. This is the DG trim knife. He made this for this pattern shape for Don Gonzalez. Asked if he could call it the Don Gonzalez knife, and he said, sure, that's fine. But I've had people say, I can't ever find these on the website. They're always out of inventory. If you go to his website and you find that it's out of inventory, or maybe the color combination's not there that you want, because he puts different handles on all of these. I've had this knife, next week will be a year. And he said, just send him an email, because really what he ends up doing is he creates inventory and he goes to the leather trade shows. And I know he attends Prescott, Waco, Pendleton, Cheyenne, and I think he was at the one in Wichita Falls about a month ago. And so really the stuff that makes it to the website is stuff that he didn't sell in his booth. And then in his booth, he ends up taking orders because he sells out of the knives. So what I'm saying is it seems like very few filter into the website. If you, he's got an email address. If you send him an email and say, I'm looking for, you can go through there and you can see the knives that are sold out. If there's one there that you like, then just send him an email and say, I'm looking for this, you know, maybe the handle color doesn't matter to you. And he said he would then add that to his list of custom orders and get that done. Because I had one person say, every time that you remind me of that, I go look and he doesn't have any. And I was on there the other day looking for to see kind of what he had. And I was kind of looking to see a knife. This is good for trimming. I use it from below the majority of the time, but for cutting out patterns in leather, I don't like the leverage of this long blade on there. And so he makes a couple that really mimic how you might hold a utility knife, either to cut knuckles down, I think it's what's called knuckles down, or you know, you may end up use it this way here, and the blade comes down at a different angle depending on how you cut. He has a custom knife for that, but I'll probably just stick with the utility knife. It does a good job for me there. Let me look and see here. Patrick Lynch asked if I'm taking any classes. I think I met you last year in Prescott. You know what? I am. I went ahead and signed up for a class, and it's kind of an oddball class. I would tell you that if, and I'll get to it, I would tell you that if you're into tooling, that Don Gonzalez's class, depending on where you're at, he does a great job of taking where you're at and move you forward. So his style of teaching isn't to stand at the front of the class and just tell you what to do. He's going to do some of that, but then he's going to walk around and see where you're at, and you're like, I struggle in this. I don't know which side of the line to be on. And he'll help you with that. So I think he could take just about anybody and improve that. And I've taken I took Don's beginning floral and then his depth and realism classes. I took them 1 year back to back, one on Wednesday and one on Thursday. The beginner was 4 hours and the other one was 8 hours. And I tell you what, I think that helps. It's kind of like if you're going to learn a foreign language, if you try to learn it from, Kansas City, it's a challenge. But if you go to that foreign country and you put yourself among people that don't speak your language, you're going to learn, right? Or you're going to starve. And so, having the 12 hours of training, like one to the next, really helped connect a lot of the dots. So the class I'm taking, Aaron Heiser's got a bookbinding. Yeah, I said bookbinding. A bookbinding class. And I've always thought that was kind of interesting, and I could maybe figure it out, but I thought maybe some of that might apply to making some journals and such, because I've bought some paper to actually make not just the cover, but to make a journal, and it's all there. So anyway, I signed up for that class, and I get a lot of enjoyment in interacting with the other people in the class, just as much as the class itself. And so I think if you're thinking about taking a class, you should look at those. And I had someone before say it was the canteen purse. Aaron Heiser taught that last year in Prescott, and I took that class. And the price of the class, like for the price, you could have ruined a half a dozen purses and figured it out on your own. And you're right, I could. But you know what? I think it's one of my ways to support the people that I learn from. I don't really watch Aaron Heiser's videos anymore. It's not a competitive thing. It's and my brother John's like, maybe you should think about that. But this journey in making YouTube videos has consumed enough time where I don't watch the videos. It used to be I'd come in the shop in the morning, and maybe this is where you watch mine, but I'd come in the shop in the morning, I'd turn the TV on, I'd see who has a video out there, and I would play the video and listen to it while I'm working on a project. And then they'd say, oh, wait a minute, what did he say? Back up and maybe pay more attention to it. But I always had it going in the shop. Now, obviously, I can't have that going in the background when I'm recording. And someone asked me, really, where I spend my time anymore, I think I really spend more time creating, editing, responding to comments on the Leathercraft than the actual craft of leather itself. And so it's a balancing act. And so I've taken a few times where I've taken a little bit of a break from it. But the other thing is, like, on my channel here, I know I say like too many times. The other thing on my channel is when we've been out of country, we were in Greece, and I was actually, with some travel time and other commitments and such, I was out of the shop for 6 weeks, and I still had those videos. So that means that in the 2 weeks leading up to that event, every day was heavy on creating content for a video there. And I know if I said, hey, I'm taking 4 weeks off to take my wife, on an anniversary trip, you're like, yep, I'll see you when you get back. But I like to be consistent in what I do, and so that's where that all came from there. Plus, I create videos for my outdoor channel as well. And some people ask about about that, and really, we used to make photo albums, and you would look through those, and the photos on the phone, I don't know how that works for everybody else, but it's really not very conducive to sit down and look through those with, some people. So part of the reason why I create those videos is for us, so that we can go back and we're like, remember when we were in London? And I'm like, oh yeah, remember that, the Central Market there? And I can go, hang on a second, and I can put the video up and we can watch the video. So it's really kind of like my live photo album. And so yeah, you're kind of like that trapped, like you go to the in-laws, and the next thing you know, they're getting out the projector and they've got a slideshow of their trip to the Smokies in 1977, and or you're watching the kids' videos of the kids growing up and stuff. Not everybody's interested in that, but my videos are over there if you're interested in it. We're in Greece currently on that, and I've got enough footage there, so I'll move on there. So I think I've really covered the majority. Oh, I did have a person ask me how far from the edge do I stitch on a project. And there's another, it depends. On my belts, a lot of the times when I'm working on a belt, if I've got a pattern in the center, that's going to be a little bit of a driving factor because I want to do something that looks pleasing visually. So it's not a 100% quarter inch. I guess if all I was making was veg tan leather belts, no pattern on them, I would probably just set my gauge, whether it was hand stitching or on the sewing machine, and they would all get stitched exactly the same. But each one of them, I look at that and see, like I've put this diamondback pattern on an 1.25 inch belt previously. Well, the pattern itself is about 3/4 inch. Yeah, it's 3/4 inch wide. So if it's on an 1.25 inch belt, it really starts to dictate where that stitching pattern is going to be. I don't want it in the diamonds, so I run it right along the edge of the diamonds. On this one, I'm kind of splitting the difference. This is an 1.5 inch belt. I'm splitting the difference on that because I think that looks pleasing. On a gunslinger pattern, depending on which template I'm using, it may be closer to the edge. And then the other thing I take into consideration is what work is that stitch line doing. In my opinion, on a belt like this, it's really not doing much of anything. It does help with stretch. It's visually pleasing. So to me, visually is more important. It's put together with contact adhesive. I don't think it's going to come apart, especially if you use similar leather. If you're using dissimilar leather, veg tan back, chrome tan front, they stretch differently, and I think they may have a tendency to separate. But the chance of this separating is minuscule. But like when I'm making a holster, it really depends on how much stress I think is going to be on that stitch line and the thickness of the leather. If it's a lighter weight leather, I'm going to be further in from the edge, probably, if that leather's doing work, say, in a holster. If it's not doing a lot of work, then I may be closer to the edge. In the case, the one that the person asked on, I was making a wallet, and I had a tooled pattern, so I just kind of split the difference. But I was probably right around 3/16 of an inch. 1/4 inch on a lot of things seems big to me, and I know that's kind of like a standard number for a lot of people, but I'm also looking at the thickness of the leather and what kind of a radius am I going to put on this edge, because I don't think it looks great when that rounding starts at the stitch line and goes around. I like it to be in a little bit. So I think it's a preference thing. It's interesting, Don Gonzalez in that first tooling class, he told me that, well, he told the group, that he does a lot of, or used to do a lot of saddle repairs, and a lot of them have maker's marks on them, tell you who it is, but he said a lot of them, he could, as he's walking up to it, he knows who made that saddle because of, you know, how it's made and designed. And I think really, there's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, I think that's good that if you have your style of making something, that people can look at it and see. On this diamond pattern, pretty regularly, I get someone that'll tell me, you know, they make a half diamond along the edge. And I know that they do. And I don't use it. I like that diamond pattern there along the edge. I like how, try to get it here where you can see it. I like that jagged edge along the edge. I like that. It's appealing to me to have that on there. But there's also a lazy reason why too. So when I create this belt and I lay that pattern out, I start in here, and this is a little bit of a depends too. But on this one, I'm 5 inches in from the buckle. I guess you could run it all the way. I'm 5 inches in from the buckle. I'm 5 inches in from the adjustment hole that the person's going to wear it at on there. So those are my two ending points. The next thing I do is I grab my wing dividers and I set it to the center, and I drag it down through here like this, and I'm making a line to line up my diamond pattern on. I had someone ask me, how do you handle if there's any variation to the width of the belt? Well, what I do then is I come back the other direction from the other side, and it's going to quickly tell you if there's any variation through there. And I think, if you're hand cutting your straps, 5 ounce leather or 5.5 ounce leather, there's a possibility you might get a little bit of variation. So if I did that from one side, then that pattern would potentially, I'll exaggerate, swell out along that line and come back in. By creating the double line through there, I'm then able to line up that center line of diamonds on there. If I don't get it exactly centered, if my belt's not exactly the same width all the way down, the line will show me that, and I can get my diamonds on that line. If I get off one side or the other a little bit, it's going to be more obvious if I have the half diamonds on the outside here, because it's going to give you a clean line against the stitch line. So, I think when you're working on leather projects and you find things that maybe are a bit of a challenge for you, whatever it is, if that's it, then try to find ways in your design to hide that or to not call attention to that. In that same class with Don, he said, a true leather master makes mistakes, but knows how to fix them, hide them, make them not noticeable. I'm not calling myself a master by any means, but I'm just telling you that look for ways to mitigate, the overall appearance based off of what happened there. Noel, hey, I appreciate you being here. I know you got things to do. Everybody's got things to do. But yeah, try to find ways in that. And, with the, my large totes, my travel totes, there's, if you look through them, it's interesting. If I had them all out here, you can see how from one to the next, I learned, areas that were a challenge, and the next time through, I tried to adapt and change how I made that, to hide that. There was a period there where I was hand skiving the tops of the bags, and it's that can be a challenge. I've got that is 28 or 30 inches wide at the top, and you want it skive consistent. And if it varies in the thickness of the skive from one end to the other, then when you roll that top, it looks funny. You can see that in there. So I started with that. Had some I didn't really like the way that worked. So then I took to where it was on line ones. I bring up the liner, and this one further past it so I can fold over and hide that. And then I bought the NP4 skiver, which has really saved a bunch of time to make those rolled tops, and that helps there. But you can look at each one and see if they're different. Someone's like, why did you stop doing it this way? Well, here's what I was trying to offset. And I just think that comes from experience. The same with making belts, wallets, whatever it is that you specialize in. I think you probably know where I'm coming from on that. So let me see here. If you got a question, put it in there. Hey, if you would you give me a thumbs up? And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. While I'm looking here, I covered that. Yeah, I think I really covered most of it. Let me look and see here. I apologize if I didn't get everybody called out there. I'm looking mainly for questions at this point. Jim asked me if I'm back in Mesa. We are. I know you didn't see the packing up video yet. It'll be out this next week, and the unpacking one. We end up leaving Colorado a little bit depending on things we've got going on here. And we actually left a few days later because I think you guys probably saw, but we had a historical rainfall in the valley up there, and it flooded a lot of people's houses. It ran us out of the house with a mandatory evacuation, and luckily our house wasn't damaged. We had some cleanup outside that we needed to do, and there's a long recovery for a lot of people up there. What kind of bags I make? I make 3 different sizes. Bag making supplies in East London. That is right. It's really an interesting shop. If you're I know if you drop by London this weekend, look them up. But it's really a cool shop. There's 2 ladies that I think are the main people on it, and they're in like 2 units. They're side by side, and they're connected in the back, but one side's set up with a bunch of sewing machine, the other one's set up with supplies depending on, what you're doing there. I fly down to Springfield, Missouri from Kansas City. You drive down? You can only get so much on the plane. Someone asked me about me visiting the Pendleton show, and I'd like to go to the Pendleton show. It's a long it's a long hike up there, and if I go to these shows, I want to be able to bring stuff back, which means I need to drive to the show. This year it just wasn't possible. If you've never been to the Pendleton show, the town of Pendleton is a historic, cowboy town. And so if you go plan on spending a couple of days before or after and see the town, and if you're bringing along a non-leather worker, there's things for them to look at and see and do there as well. I like historic towns, so it does both of those for me. But that's one reason why I don't hop on a plane and go there, is because of that. This summer, I had a video where I visited Land, Whirl, and Leather in Indianapolis, and typically I drive there, and I drove there this time, but I knew that I was picking the family up at the airport, the kids were flying in, and I was in the pickup truck. I didn't have room for anything, so I had him ship it back, which, cost me some of the money that I saved by shopping there. But he had some really cool leather, and I've got some project lined up to use that on there. But I'm typically a drive to get somewhere kind of person. I've got a trip coming up. We've got a trip coming up here, so I'll be a flying one. But let's see. I'm looking here to see if there's anybody else. Noel said it was mostly cloudy. He's on Prince Edward Island in Canada. I've always wanted to get up there. I haven't made it up there. Christmas gifts. I'm going to do a video on products that I think, a beginner or intermediate leather crafter could have for, to make for Christmas gifts. Something that, here's another thing that I look at is repeatability. Like when I'm tooling belts and stuff, I look for stuff that's repeatable. And it's the same thing with the other, but like journals and some of those, and you can take a journal and make it simple. I could probably whip one out here in about 30 minutes if I just need to cover a journal really quick, or you can spend days on it depending on how many Christmas gifts you've got to have. I've got a show actually coming up here in Arizona where I'm going to be set up my booth to show my wares. And it's the first, it's like around the 8th of, I was going to say first weekend, but 8th wouldn't be the first weekend. But I think it's like the 8th of December here in Mesa, Arizona. And Jim says he spends his winters in Prescott because of little to no wind. Yeah, that's not a real windy area there, that's for sure. But man, the Front Range of Colorado is windy. Well, I had more comments than I thought. I guess I turned my back here and get talking. I'm pretty good at talking. I need to probably get better at listening. So, Gamer in South Carolina says it's 54 degrees. I've got a long sleeve shirt on here, but yesterday it was like 89, something like that. It was hot in the garage here in the afternoon. This time of year, I try to, when we're here, get my work done early in the day and maybe go inside and edit videos, where it's cooler. And I don't edit them on computer. I edit them on my phone. Everything I do is on my phone. Post it, everything from there. And maybe if I learned a program here, but I already know that one, and it probably drives my wife crazy, but there's if we're traveling somewhere, we're sitting in an airport, I'm editing video while I'm sitting there, or if we're waiting for reservations at a restaurant, I'm probably editing video or responding on comments or something like that. So maybe that's an argument to start using a computer so that I'm not got my nose stuck in the phone all the time. But it's handy to always have it with me if I've got a delay somewhere and I'm sitting for an hour, then I can make use of that. And the funny thing is, when we are out of our house with the flood in Colorado, you think I would have got caught up on it, but I couldn't get myself to focus. I tried doing some editing and I couldn't focus on that with everything else that was going on around us there. So, I lost a lot there as well. Anyway, we've been on here long enough, more than an hour. I appreciate everybody's time. I hope you're all having a good fall. I hope that the weather's good in your area and the shop is busy with the things you want to work on in it. And if you've got, I would appreciate if you got some ideas on comparison videos to put it in the comments here, or watch one of my videos, put it in the comments there, or send me an email. Email's in my description of my channel. You can find my email there. I appreciate it. I hope everybody has a great day. Yeah, appreciate it. Have a great day. Thanks. Bye.